Evening, everyone. I am your host, Jason Miles, and welcome to another episode of This is Revolution Podcast. Thank you all for joining us this evening. Before we start, if you're new to the channel, please hit subscribe and don't forget to hit that notification bell so you are alerted whenever we go live. We're constantly adding cross streams with other channels and adding new shows. This Thursday, we'll be doing our bi-monthly news rundown with the guys from Left Reckoning. Also, tomorrow is the final episode of Movie Night Extravaganza. It's been 1 year since it launched here on TIR, and they are now over 1,000 subscribers on their own channel. So it is time that we bid adieu to Forrest and the crew. So I want to send a fat shout out to Forrest, Conan, Andy, and all of the fabulous guests they've had on Movie Night Extravaganza and shared on this channel. Those cats are definitely in the orbit in the TIR universe. So tomorrow they'll be talking about I think it's a Greek film called Z. Conan has been wanting to talk about that movie since we even started the idea of doing a movie night. So I'm sure it's going to be a good show. So check that out tomorrow night at 6 p.m. Pacific time. Additionally, if you like what we do here and you want to see it continue and you have the means to further support the channel, for our patrons, we have the exclusive Champagne Room. This is our post-show after-hours hang. We have more ridiculous, uncensored fun, usually watching some weird movies. We're actually just talking about these movies with our guests. So if they are so kind to join us in the after hours, I'm sure I can queue up some of the fabulous movies I've been watching. I found a film recently that I have never heard of before. It's called 00 Soul, and it's a James Bond knockoff movie with Billy D. Williams as a James Bond character, and he's rapping in it, and it's insane. I never thought I'd see the day that Billy D. Williams would be doing like a James Bond knockoff kind of almost Naked Gun-esque, but he still was cool. It's like they wanted him to be silly, but he had to still be Billy D. cool. It was insane. So maybe we watch a little bit of that, depending on, of course, how the conversation goes tonight. Also, we have some new merchandise. Finally, the TIR Central Committee, me, Pascal, Kuba, and Jean Bajlan, are immortalized in t-shirt form. If you had us in mug form, if you had us in mouse pad form, you can get Pascal smiling on a T. Bam. Bam. There it is. Very excited. I think I'm going to get one. horrible to wear your face on a shirt? I don't know. I've never had a face on anything. So that's exciting. With all this excitement, let me bring in the Willis to my Arnold. He is the Pascal Robert.
Peace and greetings to the chat. Peace and greetings to the audience. Peace and greetings, Jason Miles. Willis to your Arnold. Wow.
Well, I say that because people feel comfortable to like hit me up and they act like they want to talk to me, but they really want to talk to you. And it's like that episode of Different Strokes where the girl pretended like she liked Arnold because she wanted to get next to Willis. So that is who you are in the TIR world of importance. You are Willis. So picture Pascal with a shag.
Interesting.
He's frozen with a smile on his face.
Did he freeze? I was wondering what's happening. He was talking all this jack about me being Willis. And all of a sudden he gets frozen.
That was really funny, though.
Do we lose the Jason?
I believe we did.
Damn it, Mexico.
So you talking all that Willis, you talking all that good Willis smack, right? You talking all that good Willis smack. Willis came and got your internet. That's what Willis did.
That's you know what? That's Pascal's power. That's his Willis power.
Willis
did you introduce him to Toussaint while I was being silenced by the deep state?
Did I what? Did I introduce myself? No, I just spoke.
No, I'm asking Pascal if he introduced him to Toussaint.
No. Okay.
No, we didn't have time. We didn't have that much time. You weren't going that long, comrade.
Well, you know how these things are. It feels like an eternity when you're getting a notification that you are being shut down. Well, also, please welcome the headless voice of reason, the M. Toussaint.
Hello, hello. I am the Kimberly to your Willis and Arnold.
You are the Kimberly to the This Is Revolution Different Strokes. What does that make Cuba?
Oh, Dudley. Protect Cuba. So precious.
So who is Jean Bajlan? Is Jean Bajlan the gooch?
Oh my gosh, could you imagine? He has a ponytail.
So Jean is the gooch and Cuba is Dudley. So Cuba got touched at the bike store is what you're saying.
In a very special episode.
Y'all remember way too much TV.
So you're saying that Cuba got touched by was that the dad from? It wasn't the dad from 8 Is Enough. What show was that guy on?
He was the dad from 8 Is Enough.
Was he the dad from 8 Is Enough? Well, hey, Cuba, I hate to break it to you, but the dad from 8 Is Enough made you and Arnold.
8 wasn't enough. He needed more.
That was the first. I think that was the first ever very special episode, if I'm not mistaken.
Really?
Yeah. Well, we'll look it up. Someone really smart will look that up on the audio or this video version. We'll look that up and be like, no. The very first special episode was actually Happy Days.
Happy Days. Maybe it was.
When Joni moved out.
Got a little Norman Finkelstein, and
Norman Finkelstein's good.
Oh, Wu-Tang is for the children.
I need you guys to.
You have to remember the RZA, the Jizza, the old dirty bastard. They're all wonderful. Oh, I appreciate them though.
For those that don't know, somehow we did impersonation, or Pascal did an impersonation of Norm Finkelstein as the director of a Wu-Tang video because I did know some Jewish men that actually did direct Wu-Tang videos, and since we are horrible racists here, we just turned them all into Norm Finkelstein. So that's what that's about. So if you want to hear more, I believe that was on last Saturday, Tucson.
Oh, it was recently, but this super chat is blowing my mind right here.
Can you read it, Pascal?
Super chat from Philip Capet. My mom is turning 65. Anybody know a good gun range for us to go to near Ventura, Oxnard, California area? She does not play well with right wingers and doesn't want to be crammed right next to people. COVID.
Jesus.
Your mom is not playing games.
Your mom sounds like a wild bunch of fun. I want to find somewhere for your mom to go shooting guns. I feel like the 101 is pretty desolate out there. You can just drive south. Sorry,
no.
Go off the highway. Pull your gun out. Go ahead.
Tell your mom to keep that shit real.
Sniper. She's a DC sniper.
Well, no, just snipe at people. Just be like more yeehaw. There's more yeehaw in what I'm doing. You're being you.
Me.
Racism.
I was watching serial killer shows.
Pulling racism.
Weekend. Sorry.
Also, there's some bad news. Looks like most of our videos are not being allowed to have ads or limited ads due to our content.
What kind of jive turkey Babylon nonsense is this, man?
I didn't know socialists and guns were that controversial. So if you guys have the means and feel so inclined, if you like what you're hearing and seeing, drop a buck or two in the old tip jar. It goes a long way to keep the show going. Also, got to remind people, tickets are still available for the live show in LA. It's a joint venture with Give Them an Argument, Left Reckoning. The link is up in the description of the show. It's also up in the chat. So if you're listening to the show on the audio only, if you're watching the show, there's definitely a link in the description for the tickets to the LA show. This week, we will start our contest to give some away. So let's bring in our guests. The overturning.
Oh, did Jason freeze again?
Turning of Roe v. Wade was a
rough. Do you have the notes? Do you want to read the intro?
Sure. The overturning of Roe v. Wade was a shock for many, but for people in the service and for those more conservative states, the ability to have autonomy of one's body and even access to abortion was extremely difficult. Today, we're going to talk to our activist friends from Missouri to discuss the challenges that lay ahead in the battle for reproductive rights.
Howdy.
Wait.
There we go.
Sorry about that. I'm getting kicked off.
You're having tech issues because Taylor and I are here.
Yeah, this is
well, I didn't tell you guys this beforehand. I know Gene doesn't like saying it. We have a white woman ratio. You're too high right now. Like when you come on with your fella, that's totally fine. When there's too many white women,
We've upset the balance. I understand.
it's like upsetting the force. It's like it's all bad, and it really messes me up when I try to go to the black mall. I just want you to know that.
That tracks. I get it.
Yeah. Typically, if you have more than one in a room, it's going to be dangerous. So I appreciate you taking the risk, having us on.
You know, what are they going to do? What's the worst that can happen?
I do want to point out we are not just from Missouri. We are representing Missouri and Arkansas.
Yeah, I'm the Arkansas delegation of the podcast.
Arkansas, I will tell after hour stories about Arkansas. I won't take away from this conversation to tell my scary stories of Arkansas. If there's one state in the union that scares the bejesus out of me, Arkansas. But Could you guys tell us a little bit about the work that you do in the community when it comes to reproductive rights?
I'm going to let Taylor take this one because Taylor's the one doing the reproductive rights work.
Yeah, so right now, our biggest focus in the community is making sure that people have the material needs that we're meeting the material needs that people need to have an abortion, because we are now abortion in Arkansas, we can get into this a little bit later, but in the Ozarks in general has never been accessible for most people. The only clinic that we could get an abortion at in Arkansas before the fall of Roe was in Little Rock. And so I live up in northern Arkansas in Fayetteville at the University of Arkansas, and it's a 3-hour drive. And then there was a waiting period and all of that. So what we've been focused on is, with our mutual aid, is making sure that people have exactly what they need to get an abortion. So we are focusing on transportation, which is a huge thing now. We're focusing on money. We're focusing on making sure people have childcare. We're removing any obstacles that we can to make sure that people that are seeking an abortion can get the healthcare that they need. So the mutual aid organization that I organize with, it's a huge group collective effort, is called Ozarks Circle for Choice. And we work with the abortion funds. We work, just with each other to help meet needs. So that's what we're doing in the community, is just real kind of boots on the ground kind of action of what do people need? How do we connect them with the resources they need? And we just kind of take care of everything just kind of as we can do it.
Now, you said there's only one place where you are in Fayetteville, or that's that whole region of the state?
Yeah. So, there's no place that you can get an abortion in Arkansas now. It's just you can't, and you can't go to a clinic and get an abortion in Arkansas. The closest clinic to I'm pretty sure everybody in Arkansas, there might be some folks down towards like Louisiana where it might be a little easier to go up east, but in Arkansas, for the majority, it is the closest place that you can get an abortion at is in Overland Park, Kansas, which is almost 4 hours by car from Fayetteville. So from Little Rock, it would be 7. From Harrison, where I grew up, it would be 4 hours. West Memphis, Arkansas, it's going to be like 8 hours. And then you get down into like El Dorado and places that are down by Mississippi and into the Delta. I mean, you're looking at least 10 hours and at least a drive to St. Louis.
And the region where you're speaking, because I'm thinking of the states that are next to you. One of my stories about Arkansas is in Fayetteville.
Oh, wonderful. That's where I live. Woo pig suey, baby.
It's actually not that bad. It was just freaky. But so Oklahoma is not is the same thing in Oklahoma, and of course Texas. So
yeah, Oklahoma,
Texas, go.
There's not a state that Arkansas touches that you can get an abortion in, and it's a really scary reality to live in, because we knew this was coming, and especially in the Ozarks where Harvey and I live, abortion has almost always been inaccessible unless you have money. And this just, before, so where I live in Fayetteville, I would have been able to drive just, an hour and a half to Tulsa, and be able to get an abortion. But now it's just been completely, Oklahoma was the first state when Roe fell. I think it was within, Harvey, was it 3 or 4 hours, the governor had signed their trigger law into.
I think actually that Missouri was the very first.
Oh, was it? No, it was Missouri, then it was Oklahoma. Yeah.
I
forgot.
Think
Shit. Yeah.
Schmidt signed it in like 2 hours after the decision came down.
When you talk about Overland Park, Kansas, for those that don't know, if I'm not mistaken, that does border Kansas City.
Yeah.
Yeah, just across the river from Kansas City, but it's in Kansas State.
Kansas City, Missouri.
Yeah.
Right.
So being that you guys have been kind of on the front lines of this, because where you live is extremely different than where I'm from, in the very blue state of California is where I'm from.
California, more like.
Well, maybe
Clinton.
to your neighbors, but I got some bad
Yeah.
news. Take them to some places. It'll be like, hey, it's just like home. Hey, brown folks too. This is awesome. Right on, Disneyland. That's like smack in the middle of it. How did you feel when you saw a bit of liberal outrage at the overturning of Roe, knowing that this has been happening for some time, just taking away that access from women to be able to get an abortion, number one. And then there have been very strict laws, especially in the South, about abortion, especially if you're in any sort of services, from foster care to incarcerated to welfare recipients. What was your first reaction when you saw all the? Did it feel almost like faux outrage to you?
Yeah, Taylor and I talked about. I mean, Taylor and I on the day we talked about how we've known this was coming for so long, and still, like, personally felt absolutely gutted on the day, even knowing that it was coming. And in Missouri, before the decision came down, we were down to one abortion clinic for the entire state. So abortion was already largely inaccessible. But yeah, there was a part of me that wanted to see people start burning shit down. But I knew in my heart that wasn't actually going to happen. And
Is there a
it didn't.
part of you, to follow through with that question, is there a part of you that feels that for a large part of the Democratic Party, the politics of reproductive rights is performative spectacle, really rooted in manipulating election turnout?
I got in trouble on Twitter for saying, I won't say exactly what you just said. It was much less eloquent and there were a couple typos. But and this was something that, like, I think I might have screamed at the boys on the podcast. Not that they were guilty of it, but just the week after this happened, Harvey and I just got to yell on the podcast for an hour, and it was really good for us. But we talked so much about this, about how my entire life, I'm 31 years old, my entire life I've heard from Democrats, we have to codify Roe. We have to protect this sacred thing. And we watched again and again and again and again how every liberal politician I think, like, in the national sphere, in Congress, and then in the White House, basically used it as a bargaining chip, did not ever do anything to actually codify Roe. And then when things happen, they use it as a fundraising tool. We had a local candidate here, who I will not name, who had never, ever, ever typed the word abortion on her website, on her Twitter page that she runs, on her Facebook page that she runs, had never mentioned abortion, because she was, has to be conservative in a race she's definitely going to lose. And the day that Roe overturned, she posted a fundraising plea. And I said, you should literally be ashamed of yourself, asking for money when Roe literally just fell, and people are in Little Rock having their appointments canceled for their abortions. They are no longer to be able to get the abortions that they need. That's happening as you are posting this on Twitter, and you tell me that there's no better use of maybe $10 from your constituents in Springfield or in Springdale, Arkansas. And it was, so I feel like, our whole lives we have seen the Democratic Party use this as a bargaining chip, and they're going to keep using it as a bargaining chip, as we've seen, to raise more money so we can vote for more, pro-choice Democrats, allegedly.
Yeah, I mean, you saw it just last week.
Mm-hmm.
Biden up there. Spotify route. He's lying. Yeah.
And it's just like everybody is just, it's like Charlie Brown with the damn football over and over again. They're never going to do anything. This is their plan. I think they were counting on this happening so they wouldn't lose the presidency, and they should fucking be ashamed of themselves.
Do you think that the bottom line is that they are sincerely on the politics, are not animated by reproductive freedom and justice to the extent that they have been rhetorically using that rhetoric for 50 years? Or is it that simply this has never been anything but a get out the vote mechanism, a cynical get out the vote mechanism for them? Or are they afraid of confronting the actual right-wing evangelical base on the issue?
I think that I think there's some people like in my state at lower house level races that genuinely care about reproductive rights, but I think they don't care about who has access to reproductive rights, because class always has access to reproductive rights no matter what, because they have the money to facilitate that.
Can you kind of explain that? Because I think some people probably get confused, because if they think, well, if abortion's illegal, how does one still have access?
Well, I think if you have money, anything's possible for you. I think you can always travel to anywhere you want to get the health care that you need. You can have it brought into your home if you need that, you know. It's those barriers don't exist for you. And I think the further out of touch you get with the people and with the working class, you know, they don't care about our access to healthcare.
Well, those barriers didn't exist before either, though, didn't they? For rich people. Rich women were still getting access in places where access was limited, right?
You mean before Roe?
Before Roe.
Mm-hmm.
No, before Roe fell, I should say.
Oh, before Roe fell. Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You guys keep freezing for me. I don't know if it's on my end or if everyone's experiencing a little freezing.
I was seeing
or...
you freeze for a second as well, so I don't know whose end it's on.
Yeah. It's the Hoot and Holler curse. I'm so sorry.
Don't worry about it. For some reason, whenever we talk about abortion on this show, there's weird stuff always happens.
Oh no.
So,
well, if
maybe there's too many men on it talking. Sometimes I feel that's what.
Like I don't.
Yeah, you froze for a second, Harvey.
Yeah.
So it's you freezing. It's you.
Oh, jeez, it's me. It's me.
I try to warn you guys.
Listen, you did. At the top, you warned us.
You know, just lie and say one of y'all is native. That's what the academics do.
Hey, I'm Italian.
Yeah.
That's different.
Harvey is a proud Italian American woman, and I'm so proud to know her.
I'm gonna try and get a stronger internet cable. Carry on.
Okay.
Toussaint.
Mm-hmm.
Would you like to add?
I came across a TikTok about a guy who said that he was one of those people who assist people walking into abortion clinics.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember what those are called.
Oh, the clinic escort.
There we go. The escorts. So he was an escort, this middle-aged black dude, and he was like, the night before work, I wanted to go to the clubs. So he's chilling and he's late for work in the morning. And it was very important that he be on time and early even for work. And he found out the day after he went to the clubs, when he was late to work, why it was so important. It was because he needed to escort the rich women into the abortion clinic before their hours. Yeah, before the open hours. Yeah. And because he was late, he was fired. Like this, it's that important. These rich women need their abortions, okay?
That's kind of
sad. I believe that 100%. Like that's and that's kind of just to Harvey's point of if you have the means, like if you have the money, if you have the power, these things are always going to be accessible to you. It might not be as maybe easy as it was, but that's a huge thing that we see in the like the mutual aid organizing that I'm in, is that I mean a lot of times the biggest barrier is just that it's money, because it's at least, now to get an abortion, travel, and everything. I mean, you're looking at upwards of $2,000, and that's so much money.
Woo.
Yeah,
So the price of them went up.
yeah.
Does it feel like market forces are making those prices go up?
I don't know that I could speak to that. I only took one economics class and I cried the whole time.
Good answer.
But it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, just based on like everything else, the price of everything else has been going up. We've been seeing that, and of course, like drug manufacturers are gonna like try to jack up the prices if they can, and then also like it's Planned Parenthood a lot of times that like clinics that we're sending people to, and like I'm thankful that we do have abortion providers, but like Planned Parenthood is like not known for like being like the most like ethical with like their like labor practices and stuff. So like if you told me like Planned Parenthood like raised the price on abortions, like it wouldn't shock me. I don't know if that's happened, but it wouldn't shock me.
But it's not just, it's not just the cost of your abortion, it's your travel
Yeah.
costs, it's your missed wages for taking off work, it's you have to eat if you're traveling, like it's all of those things.
So all of these unnecessary secondary courses have now been interpolated into women's health care simply because we have a Supreme Court that's trying to take us back into the Stone Ages when it comes to the right of a woman to choose. Yet at the same time, we don't have a political party that's willing enough to put a dedicated fight into any kind of policy agenda that's willing to remedy this. So how do you women create a policy agenda or politics where there's an alternative to this kind of stale situation so that we can actually fight this current conundrum?
Well, I don't know. The answer isn't within the Democratic Party. I don't think. I think that the answer is within, it's in the hands of the people. This is a radical problem that requires radical change. And it's going to take a people's uprising to get the type of access to healthcare that we all deserve.
Did you feel there was a moment when Roe was overturned where that radical call existed and it was exterminated?
But yeah, like I said, I was hoping that, this could be a spark. But it didn't happen. And I feel like misogyny plays a part in that.
Wow.
Speaking of, uprisings, recently in the red state of Kansas, there was a vote on abortion, and a lot of people came out, and it definitely wasn't a partisan decision. It was a lot of people from different parties that wanted to keep that right. Do you think as the religious right is taking over in certain states, I wouldn't say they've taken over the party as a whole, the GOP we're talking, do you think there is a consensus that we're starting to see where people are collectively pushing back on nonpartisan lines?
Well, I live in a state where the religious right is planning a theocratic Christo-fascist takeover of the region.
Wow. Say it again for the people in the back.
I do like fascist too. It's my new band.
Yeah, I mean that's what it is. And I mean, I don't know. Are more people starting to wake up to that this is what's happening, that they want a theocratic state? I think more people are starting to wake up to it, but I think too many people are still dependent on electoral strategies to currently organize a real resistance against what we're actually fighting.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think people are so married to the idea of electoralism as an answer?
Propaganda, a century of yeah, A century of
Pascal, why do you
American propaganda.
Why do you think that people are so? I mean, I'm doing a video essay on it right now, and this is kind of an interesting.
I think that the only mechanisms of politics that we have seen in America are electoral in nature, and that we've been so divorced from movement politics for pretty much almost 50 plus years that the ability of actually having mass politics affect policy is something that many people cynically don't think is possible. I
So
don't
you
think we know what movements really look like anymore.
For liberals
so
on the left, you mean?
Yes.
well. Let me ask the panel and the chat a question as well, since we're talking about movement politics. Do you think there is a conflation between protest and movement politics? And what role do you think protest is playing to kind of almost squash movement politics?
I think that you're absolutely correct to ask that question. There is a conflation between protest and movement politics. I'm thinking about Bayard Rustin's famous piece that he wrote from protest to politics, talking about the change in the direction in which black politics should have taken after the 1960s to a more practical way of dealing with the actual machinations of dealing with the political establishment. And I think movement politics can be about protests, but it doesn't have to be limited to that. It can be about how we actually interact with putting actual policy pressure on the interlocutors of governance, whether they be senators, state legislatures, or local municipal government administrations, to actually implement policies that we feel are important. I think of movement politics as being the kind of politics where we monitor the way bills are passing, what kind of proposals are being put up, as well as protests when we find that those things are not in our direction as well. But at the same time, I think they're tools. I think protest is a tool, and movement politics is more of a vehicle.
Well said.
What say you, uh, ladies?
Well, well, what I can say is that I mean, yeah, I agree that protests can squash us from reaching our actual goals, because we've had a few protests in Springfield, about 500 people at each, and amazing energy. But then where does that go? What does that translate into? And actually, well, our local PSL chapter has seen explosive growth after these protests. I think they put out a stat that they have had the most growth per capita of any other chapter of the PSL in the country.
In Missouri?
In Springfield, Missouri, yeah.
Oh, word! I know
Yeah.
Gloria went down to the South a lot when she was doing her.
Gloria is actually like their like regional
Okay.
director.
Gotcha.
That she's in direct contact with them here in Springfield. But it was a thing like in 2020 for the BLM protests, Springfield saw like 2,000 people out, which is the largest protest Springfield has ever had. But all of those people, that they didn't do anything after that, because
feel like
they showed up to the protest. So
Harvey and Taylor, does it feel like then? And I'm just asking. I don't know the answer. I'm going to get your guys' opinion. Does it feel like people go and they release that frustration, and now there's a record of their participation? Ergo, I've done my due diligence when it comes to moving the political needle.
Yeah, I absolutely think that's the case. I mean, not for everybody, of course.
Yeah,
I think
of course.
largely, I think a really good example of that was down here in Fayetteville during the protests of summer 2020 around the murder of George Floyd. Is that you saw a lot of very rich white East Fayetteville liberals showing up, and he called out for his mom, and invoking a lot of really powerful emotions. And then went home and got on Facebook and were congratulating the mayor for, signing a budget that included money for a bronze statue of a police officer. And so it's that, and I think a lot of people are like, oh, hey, like I was able to put this on Instagram, like I was there, I'm moving the needle. And I definitely know that like when I was younger, I was probably guilty of that kind of thinking too. But yeah, I definitely think, you see people that show up and they're excited. And I know like with our organization, Ozark Circle for Choice, after Roe fell, we saw immediately like people were like, how do we get involved? How do we do whatever? And it was just like, hey, like this is great. We're a little overwhelmed right now, but and now that it's petered out and we've had some other news stories, it's like, oh hey guys, where are you? Let's get to work. There's still work to be done, and it's it's hard. People are definitely not as engaged.
I think American culture in general is pretty episodic. I mean, you can see it with the GOP. They're very obvious. One week it's like Lady M&Ms, and the next week it's God knows what. Just kind of jumping from one thing to another. Everything is calling for your attention.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's like we're all walking through the internet all the time, walking through Times Square. It's ads everywhere. Somebody wants something from you everywhere you go. And I don't know. I think a movement is sustained. It's over time, and I think that's definitely a muscle we haven't worked out in a long time. And I think a lot of people don't even have a concept of that.
Well, did I cut you off, MT?
No.
I'm sorry. I was talking to Teray a few months ago, and we were talking about another thing I was trying to put together. And he brought up a point that he always tells his students, his freshman students, about MLK's famous speech that is immortalized as the I Have a Dream speech. But a main part of the speech also is that if you've come here to just let off steam, then you're missing the point of this entire protest for jobs and freedom. Does it feel like, and if I'm harping on this for too long, tell me to shut up and we can move on.
I love it. I love to harp on things. Let's go.
Okay. Does it feel like, and I feel this way sometimes, that we are in an era of hashtag activism and sloganeering? To the point
yeah, man.
The way language is devolving. People almost speak in Twitter speak, especially in the circles that we're talking about right now. And again, it isn't everybody. Is that also antithetical to the bigger issue at hand, which is, the way we look at women's reproductive rights and just healthcare in general?
It's turning everything. Go ahead, ladies, please.
No, go ahead, Pascal.
No.
You
You
have something?
first. You went first. I saw that.
Oh, well, I have a whole thing about the internet destroying society, which I won't go
You get the
too
whole
far
screen.
into.
Please give it to us.
Yes.
But I mean, yeah, there's, on the one hand, people are being exposed to ideas that they probably never would have come across, like especially living where I live. Ideas from the left that they never would have seen if they hadn't seen it on Twitter. But then on the other hand, those ideas are being filtered down. Like as they're reading it, they're already filtered down. And it is taking, some of the bite out of them to where it's just, hashtag activism. I've made my post. I can move on.
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing the thing. Mm-hmm. But then they wouldn't be thinking those ideas at all if they hadn't read them on the internet. So I don't know.
Marx was a poster. So was Engels.
Taylor, I want to hear what you have to say about this. I feel like you have something you want to say.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Harvey. I think the consequences of the internet will be studied long after we're gone.
Mhm.
I don't know that having access to maybe everything that we had access to at our age was maybe the best idea. But I have to agree. Harvey and I met because of Twitter. Like our whole podcast is because like one of our other co-hosts and I were doing a weird Trillbillies bit on Twitter because we were bored and it was 2020.
Mhm.
But I also agree that like I also agree with Harvey. It's like I know, like for me personally, like I grew up in like a mega conservative environment, and if I had never been exposed to some of these ideas on the internet, I would never have become who I am today. So I think that that's great. But I do think that yeah, sometimes we get caught up in this idea of okay, hey, I made a post, like I'm in the clear, I'm a good person, and I also think that comes down to something that Harvey and I and are on talk about on our podcast is that capitalism has like truly like smashed us all down to where it feels like oh like I'm having to work like 60 hours this week and it's like okay like how do I get involved with all of this time that I don't have, like what can I do? And I think that can be really hard for people, especially when you live in like a pretty rural area, like maybe not really where I live. I live in a pretty urban area, but like just even outside of where I grew up in like Alpena or Harrison, like it's like okay like I'm having to work all these hours and I feel so divided from my community because I'm having to work so much and I don't like even have even any representation there. And then it's just like how do we bridge that gap of like how do we get people in with their schedules and like how insane life is just for everybody. So yeah.
Pascal, do you have some
You
gems?
know, listen, man, you know, I'm totally here for the belief that the internet has cynically taken away from the meat space of going and interacting with human beings. That is desperately what we need in these kind of moments, where we need a deeper understanding of everyone's empathetic capacity to feel where people are going with. I think the problem is that our emotions are stunted by these machines and their digital capacity to truly understand what people are going through, and all of this just becomes blips and blops and images in our heads, and we're not really processing the reality of what people are suffering through.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're
And
talking about, Pascal. I only see zeros and ones.
Well, what does that then say for? I'm doing this piece on media, and I've been doing a lot of research on the history of media as no longer being really about informing a populace, but touching people emotionally. If there's one topic that has touched people emotionally for the entirety of my 45 years on this planet, it is abortion. But it felt like that it was as sacrosanct as the Second Amendment for a lot of people when people thought about Roe v. Wade, especially cats that weren't in the system or didn't live in certain regions of the country. Do we still have to have that emotional attachment to get people energized about this? Or do you think it's just inherent in the conversation and we need to move beyond this emotional attachment and think about this more strategically? Because the constitutionality was always a bit flimsy, even from the surviving attorney that was part of the original Roe decision had mentioned this as well recently.
I don't think we should work on manipulating emotion for the sake of getting out political results. I think that's very cynical. And I think that's something that the current politics does well enough to the detriment of actual organizing. I think what we need is better informed citizenry as to one, how our government actually works, and as to two, what are the forces that are obstacles that are making it possible for us to not know how to get the policies we want implemented and how to fight those obstacles. I think that what we suffer from is a lack of political imagination because people are not educated from a position of understanding the potential power citizenry has to influence the mechanisms of governance.
Taylor, do you want to add something? I'm putting you on the spot.
you put me on the spot. No, honestly, I think you nailed it, Pascal. I mean, it's just I don't know that manipulate like I think manipulating emotions is sometimes the play, but I think it's just it feeds into this idea that it has to be like this huge emotional decision when somebody has an abortion, and sometimes it is. But sometimes we can without laying out all these terrible worst case scenarios for folks, we can just say people deserve the right to an abortion, and you can't take that away from me. The state is never going to strengthen it. It's only going to weaken like my like given access to medical care. So I have always been a fan of let's just let's stop the like these horrible things happen to like these like young children, and that's why we need access. We can just say people deserve access to healthcare, and we can leave it at that. But
Yeah, I mean,
that doesn't dial into the emotions to some of the like I probably the money around it. So sorry, Harvey.
well, I wanted to build on what you were saying, and you guys have all been cutting out really bad for me, so I apologize if I'm repeating anything that's already been said. But this is, as I said, this is we're facing radical problems, and abortion is just one of them. We're facing compounding radical issues that require radical solutions. And so I think we need to start from the ground up. And if we, take it all the way back down until we are seeing everyone as human beings, that's a good place to start, where we don't need to get emotions involved in it, where you can just see a fellow human being as a person who deserves access to healthcare. And that's, a good place to start.
I think
Absolutely.
I would want to make a distinction between involving emotions or feeling comfortable with people showing up with their emotions to a movement or a protest and manipulating emotions. Like those to me are very, very different things. I think your idea about movements and protests, I think that was actually a good juxtaposition because I think they compete with each other for sure. I think there's an approach to getting people together for a protest. Everybody has to get out in the streets. We need bodies in the streets. And it doesn't matter what bodies they are. You can contribute so much more to a movement when you get to be a whole person that can do things that maybe some other person can't do. But it's still this body's approach. Does that make sense?
Why do you think that is? Do you think there's just a love affair with the idea of what the 60s were still?
Definitely that, but also trying to get numbers up. And taking a numbers approach is always going to kind of get you not caring about individuals. It's like any guy in a club, just working
Maybe
the
I get
numbers.
99 no's. But the one lady wants to come back to my mom's house. Just be really quiet.
Well, I like Pascal was saying with like policy, with turning that energy into policy, because now I'm off. I can't lounge anymore.
No, wait, here, look at this. We are comfort first at TIR. Bam.
Oh,
Th-
love
thank-
it.
Thank
Nice.
you.
Thing.
But yeah, how do you turn that energy? Because you're out here, you're protesting, you're voicing your opinion that you think abortion should be a human right. Okay, that's great. So how do you make it that way? Because the answer clearly isn't voting in more Democrats, because they have shown over and over again that they're not dedicated to getting this done. So what is the policy to enact this en masse so that all people have it?
I have a crazy question, crazy idea. What do you think about taking over Planned Parenthood? Taking a Justice Democrats approach to taking over that organization. I know a lot of leftists feel it's inadequate. And a lot of liberals just kind of, I don't know, they're fine with it, I guess. But it could do more. Why aren't we taking over these organizations?
That's a non-profit organization, though. It's not a public. It's not a public space, is it?
I don't think they're a nonprofit.
They're a corporation, though. They're a private corporation. They're not a government space.
I guess how would it be taken over? Like just infiltrating and
brute force.
Infiltrating. Brute force. Break down the doors, storm the
Guns.
bathroom.
Just brute force.
So would that be? So I think like the best, or the way that I'm envisioning that would be like more pro-choice or pro-abortion providers. So that would be I mean, and I think, and this is just, you know, based on like a small like sample size, just like that I see on Twitter, but it does seem like there are, you know, some a rising number maybe of like pro-choice providers, whether that be, you know, nurses, doctors, even I think you would even have to get into like the reception area and techs and all of that. But I mean, I don't think that is an unrealistic like way that you could like a takeover of Planned Parenthood.
Mm-hmm.
But that would be.
Go ahead.
Oh yeah, but I mean, it would just, you know, it would be kind of one of those things. Like it would just have to be.
So how are we going to force them to provide a service that has been made, you know, that has lost its legal protection in states when they're taken over?
Yeah, that would be. I mean, that would be the big question. But I think anywhere that has pro-choice providers, I think. I mean, of course, like that facility might not be able to provide that type of care, but I think any place that you have that, it's going to be easier if they do need to refer you somewhere or you know, to another state. I mean, it's not going to take away the financial burden, or how do we get access to people in where they live? Like that's unfortunately probably going to be a policy issue, but
you guys are so practical. I'm thinking in terms of their voice.
As we're getting ready to end on this final hour, I have to ask to put you on the spot question, and I know some of you guys have, you know, adult obligations. Will you be able to join us in the very exclusive champagne room?
I'm here for lounge hour.
Okay.
I was going to cry myself to sleep if I didn't get invited to the champagne room. So yes, I'll absolutely be there.
Okay. I needed to know that. And then second of all, we have to leave on some sort of hope, right? We can't leave this conversation so doom and gloom. But we can't be Pollyanna-ish either. Mm-hmm. Is there some kind of silver lining, or is there some sort of hope we see in Kansas? Does Kansas give us any sort of hope?
Go ahead, Taylor.
I felt some hope with the referendum or the amendment that passed in Kansas. I think that it does show, like, if you can organize people, you can make these changes. I think that it's going to come down to, unfortunately, I mean, especially in the Ozarks, like we were just gerrymandered all to hell. In Arkansas, there are like some things going on, like at the Supreme Court of the state level, of just getting initiatives onto the ballot, and they're making that harder. So I wouldn't be surprised, just based on what happened in Kansas, if in these states that were like, oh, hey, we're pumped the Roe's overturned, if we don't see it harder to get things on the ballot. But I think any time that there's a win, you know, especially that after a cruel summer, that one was nice to see. So
Taylor, you're very lucky that I do not have that Bananarama song handy, because I would have dropped it right now.
It is a Taylor Swift song. I'm so sorry.
Bananarama song. You take it back. I don't care if you're 31, 13, or 105. God damn it. It's Bananarama in this house. Now, if I go to Fayetteville, Arkansas, you can call it Taylor Swift all day long, god damn it. But in this house, it's Bananarama, okay?
I am literally wearing a Taylor Swift shirt right now.
Oh my God.
There she is.
This This is I wanted to hate Taylor Swift, and I was visiting a friend. I will end with a music story so you guys can all have a chuckle. I was visiting a friend, and he was engineering in the big studio in Nashville. My buddy had moved to Nashville. We grew up together in Richmond, California, and he had an autographed picture of Taylor Swift on his wall, which I thought was extremely unsettling for a grown man in his mid-30s.
Maybe it was
And I
a
was
gift.
like, why don't you have custody of your kids again? I always
Taylor's gonna leave.
and he looks at me and he goes, "Oh no, man, yeah." He goes, "Yeah." Now that I look at it, you know, he's got the quintessential single dad house.
Yeah.
It just looks sad.
And just a framed signed photo of Taylor Swift. That would be unsettling. This is not Taylor's
kinda
fault.
Disheveled. An ashtray. It's like, who the fuck is an ashtray inside anymore? And he goes, "Oh no, I engineered all her albums, and I knew her, and my kids didn't believe me that I knew her, so she gave this to me because it was like she wore like this long ass thing on it, and he goes, she gave this to me to give to my kids so they would know that their dad knows Taylor Swift."
And he got it in the divorce. Cool.
And you can take that goddamn picture out this fucking house. Good for nothing. Give a damn if you know Braisley. You don't pay the bills. No, that's my life. That's actually not his. His was very different. But I wanted to not like Taylor Swift for just because I'm a dumbass. And he was like, actually, he's like, dude, she's a great kid, man. He's like, oh, she's just a great kid. Nothing I wanted to hear at the time. You know, I wanted to hear, man, she sucks. And she just does blow all over the console and yells at people. It's people fight. None of that. He's like, oh, she's a sweet kid.
Man.
Yeah. I was like, what about Kesha? Because Kesha was hot at this time. She's like, oh, love her to death, man. She's a sweet kid.
I have a Kesha story. A guy that I was a roommate with whenever Kesha was on MySpace. OG. You know, you could have your top 5 bands or whatever, and my friend's band was in Kesha's top 5.
That's incredible.
Oh, wow.
And that also gets this.
You'd be surprised how many people love the crack.
Thank you, wonderful ladies from the Hoot and Holler podcast, Harvey Day and Swifty T. That's your new nickname, Taylor. Just deal with it.
This is the best day of my life. I don't know why I would be mad.
That's what we're gonna call you. I'm gonna harass you on the Twitters.
Thank you.
By calling you Swifty T. Be ready for it. I made a very sad intro to this, and we'll go out with it. And thank you guys, and we are out.
It makes sense. I have argued 2 abortion cases in the U.S. Supreme Court, including the 1992 case, Planned Parenthood versus Casey, which is credited with saving Roe versus Wade. I was a co-founder of the Center for Reproductive Rights, and I spent 20 years of my career arguing on behalf of women who needed abortions and other reproductive health care. So my answer is depressing but direct. Roe versus Wade will be dead within the year.
The Roe v. Wade decision was once thought to be sacrosanct legislation, but a 50-year fight from the right has overturned Roe, and anti-abortion activists are doubling their efforts to make abortion illegal. How does the overturning of Roe affect women in red states? How will this affect the GOP in the upcoming primary election? We'll ask these questions and more. This is Revolution. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to hit